In today's video, we're telling the tragic story of Chhewang Nima, a man who summited Everest 19 times but died on a routine job. He willingly gave up a world record to keep a promise to his clients, and that noble choice led him to the fatal slopes of Mount Baruntse. How did the smiling Sherpa, a man who survived the death zone on the roof of the world, vanish without a trace at 7,000 meters? This is a story about how the mountains take the very best, even when they do everything right. But to understand the magnitude of his sacrifice, we have to go back to the very beginning, to a place where every single breath is a fight for life. The air here is so thin, every breath is work. And in this world, where the sky itself feels like it's pressing down on your shoulders, a boy named Chhewang Nima was born around 1967. His home is the Khumbu, a harsh region at the foot of the planet's greatest peaks. His family are poor Sherpas, who for generations have known only one law: the mountain gives and the mountain takes away. Classrooms and thick textbooks were luxuries from another world. His education came from the trails carved into the rock and the language of the wind. From his earliest years, Chhewang Nima learned what real labor was, not in an office or a factory, but the kind of hard that truly breaks you. His youth was spent under the weight of other people's gear. While foreign climbers walked lightly, breathing in the air of freedom, he hauled loads that weighed more than he did. Every step up was a battle against gravity, against oxygen starvation, against himself. But the years spent under this unimaginable pressure didn't break Chhewang Nima. They reforged his body on a cellular level. His lungs learned to pull oxygen from the void, and his muscles gained a steel-like endurance. He developed the kind of high-altitude acclimatization that others pay huge sums of money and spend months of training to achieve. For him, this wasn't just a way to survive. In a world with no other paths forward, working in the mountains is the only way up, the only ticket to a better life. And by the early 1990s, Chhewang Nima was no longer just a porter trailing behind the group. He was a living embodiment of the mountain, an inseparable part of it. He knew its every curve, every whim of the weather. His body was a perfect instrument, tempered in the thin air, and soon that instrument would face a test that no one could yet imagine. That test didn't take long to arrive. The early 90s. The world of mountaineering was buzzing with new names, new technology, new ambitions. And into this world, Chhewang Nima stepped as if into an icy crevasse. Now, he wasn't just carrying loads to base camp. He was being hired as a high-altitude porter. This was a completely different level, a different game. Up here, you're not just a carrier. You are the insurance policy, the safety line, the last hope for those who paid thousands to touch the sky. A mistake here costs everything. In the autumn of 1994, his name appeared on the roster of a British expedition led by Henry Todd. The goal, Everest. The route, the classic South Col. But in the mountains, nothing is ever classic. Every ascent is a new script, written by ice and wind. His job was to forge a path through the Khumbu icefall, a labyrinth of shifting house-sized towers of ice. Chhewang carried oxygen tanks, ropes, food. For the client climbers, it was an adventure, a challenge. For him, it was a job, grueling, exhausting, but the only one he knew. He watched as the mountain tested the foreigners. He saw how the thin air drained their strength, turning strong men into helpless creatures. And he just breathed. He just walked. His body, forged by years of labor, worked like a perfect machine, oblivious to the altitude. He saw the fear in others' eyes, but in his gaze, there was only focus. And then, on October 10th, 1994, he was 27. He stood there, on the roof of the world, on Everest, at an altitude of nearly 9,000 meters, where commercial airliners fly. The wind tried to tear him from the summit, but he stood firm. In that moment, Chhewang was no longer just a porter. He was a conqueror. From that vantage point, his entire past world, all the villages of the Khumbu, seemed like tiny dots in an infinite expanse. The descent from the summit was only the beginning of his true ascent. News of his success spread through the climbing community faster than an avalanche. He didn't just come back. He came back with a reputation. Reliable, strong, almost immune to altitude. Now, he didn't have to look for work. Work looked for him. By 1995, Chhewang began a long-term partnership with a major agency. Sherpa Shangri-La treks. This marked the start of his 16-year journey as one of the most sought-after high-altitude guides in the Himalayas. He moved from the category of those who assist to the category of those who lead, and very soon, the whole world would learn what Chhewang Nima was capable of when the mountain showed its true face. He was no longer walking in the shadows. Now, he was the one casting them. Chhewang Nima becomes a Sardar, a word spoken with respect in the Sherpa world, one that needs no explanation. A Sardar is the brain of the expedition, its strategist, its cold calculator. He's responsible for the route through the most dangerous sections, for fixing the ropes, for the life of every single person, client, partner, every Sherpa on the line. He looks the icefall straight in the face and decides where the safe line lies. He reads the weather in the shade of the clouds and the way the wind cuts across the slope. All the responsibility falls on him, and its weight is far heavier than any pack. And with that status came money. Not just money, but a different life. Chhewang starts earning 5, even 6 times more than he once did carrying other people's packs. It's a sum that, for a boy from a poor village in the Khumbu, seems astronomical. His wife, Lahamu Chiki, still runs her small tea shop in their village. The smell of spices and hot tea. That's the smell of home, of stability. But now, it's just the anchor that keeps the family on the ground, while he walks among the clouds. The main income, the engine of their new life, comes from his expeditions. Every time he leaves for the mountains, it means months of anxious waiting for her. But it's also the guarantee of their future. And Chhewang knows how to spend every rupee he earns. He gives his children what he never had, a choice. He sends his 2 sons to a private school in Kathmandu. Every step he takes in the death zone pays for a lesson in a safe classroom, hundreds of kilometers away. He climbs up, so his children can walk on level ground. And Chhewang keeps climbing, again and again. Everest becomes almost routine for him. Sometimes he summits twice in a single season. Just think about that. Twice in a few weeks, he makes the journey from base camp to the roof of the world and back. It's a physical and mental marathon at the very limit of human endurance, and he runs it like a regular work shift. Through it all, he remains a pragmatist. He's not chasing records for clean ascents. His job is the safety of his clients and his own. That's why he always uses oxygen. It's a professional standard, a tool that allows him to stay sharp, strong, and make the right decisions where a single mistake could be the last. By 2008, his personal tally shows an incredible number, more than 15 successful ascents of Everest. He is no longer just one of the Sherpas. He is a living institution, a man whose name at base camp is a guarantee of quality and reliability. In a place where every breath is a victory, a smile can seem like madness. But that's exactly what became Chhewang Nima's signature. In the professional community, he earned a nickname, the Smiling Sherpa. Clients who paid fortunes for a chance to climb Everest told incredible stories. They said Chhewang would smile even up there, at 8,000 meters. In the death zone, where the icy thin air burns your lungs, where your body is shutting down and your brain is foggy from oxygen deprivation, he would just look at them and smile. It wasn't just a facial expression. It was a signal. He had the situation under control. He was there. He knew the way, even in the dark. In that hellscape, his smile did more for exhausted climbers than any words could. It was like an anchor in a storm of fear and exhaustion, pulling them back to life. This calm was the foundation of his reputation. He was considered one of the most respected and technically gifted guides of his generation. His name, Chhewang Nima, opened doors at the most prestigious expedition companies in the world. He began working with giants like Alpine Ascents International, an American company that hires only the best of the best. His professionalism became legendary. A separate chapter was his work with his cousin, Lahakba Rita, another icon of high-altitude mountaineering. 8 times they stood on the summit of Everest, shoulder to shoulder. This wasn't just a partnership. It was a bond. 2 men, connected by blood and a rope, who wordlessly entrusted their lives to each other in the harshest conditions on the planet. Their tandem became the benchmark for precision, trust, and solid work at altitude. Yet his authority wasn't built on harshness. Everest Base Camp is a cauldron of ambition, ego, and frayed nerves. People from all over the world gather there, and conflicts can erupt over the smallest things. But Chhewang was a peacemaker. He was famous for his gentle nature and an amazing ability to diffuse arguments before they could ignite. He never raised his voice. He solved problems with a quiet word and that same disarming smile. He proved that in a world dominated by force, true power lies in tranquility. And the world noticed not only his strength, but also his spirit. In 2010, his reputation reached a new level. Chhewang Nima became an official brand ambassador for Sherpa adventure gear. Now, his face, his smile, wasn't just a personal brand. It was a symbol for an entire people, a symbol of the resilience, reliability, and unique connection the Sherpas have with the Great Mountains. But behind that famous smile was something else entirely, a cold, precise calculation. Chhewang Nima forged an ironclad rule for himself, one etched into the icy tablets of his experience. The summit is optional, but a safe descent is mandatory. A client's ambition, their summit fever, that desire to prove something to themselves and the world, all of it takes a back seat when faced with real danger. Chhewang is prepared to turn a group around just 100 meters from the summit if he sees the weather shifting or a client running on fumes. Because he knows the mountain isn't going anywhere, but a person can be left on it forever. And this principle isn't just talk, it's action. One day on Everest, at an immense altitude, Chhewang and his brother Lhakpa stumble upon a nearly motionless figure. It's a Nepali climber, Usha Bista. She's in trouble, disoriented, and unable to continue. For many in this thin air, where everyone is fighting for their own survival, someone else's problem is just that, someone else's problem, but not for them. They abandon their own ascent. They share their precious oxygen, their strength, their time. They begin a complex rescue operation, step by step, bringing her down to a zone where she can breathe. They risk their own lives for another person, and they save her. But intuition and natural strength aren't enough for Chhewang. He understands that the mountains are becoming more and more unpredictable, and the clients less and less prepared. So in the off-season, while other Sherpas are resting in their villages, he flies halfway across the world to the United States. He sits down at a desk. He studies the latest rescue techniques, avalanche safety, and modern high-altitude medicine. He learns because he has seen too much. Too many times the mountain has reminded him of its power. He's seen his colleagues, strong and experienced Sherpas, not return home. And every one of those tragedies becomes a lesson he has no right to forget. To his family, Chhewang says something that reveals his entire character. I don't need glory. I need people to be safe with me. For him, the mountains are not an arena or a podium. They are his workplace, a harsh, unpredictable, but his own. And he does everything he can to eliminate unnecessary risk for those he leads. He's the first one across a glacier, testing the snow bridges over crevasses. He carries extra oxygen, just in case something goes wrong. He becomes a human shield, taking the brunt of the elements so that others can ascend, fulfill their dream, and return home. It's the spring of 2010. The air in Everest Base Camp is electric. The season is in full swing, and Chhewang Nima is back in his icy office, serving as the head sirdar for the Alpine Ascents International Expedition. He's leading another group to the top. Everything is going according to plan. The route is set, the clients are acclimatized, and the weather is offering a small window. And Chhewang once again does what he does best. He climbs to the summit of the world for the 19th time. 19. The number sounds almost unreal. He becomes only the second person in history to reach that figure. And the entire mountaineering world holds its breath. Because at the very top of this Olympus, there is only one man, the legendary Apa Sherpa, who at that moment has 20 ascents. Chhewang is a single step away from matching the world record. What's more, he has everything he needs to do it right now. The weather window is still open. His body is perfectly acclimatized. He could simply descend to Camp 4, rest for a couple of days, and go up again with another group. It would be so simple. The whole camp is buzzing. Journalists are already preparing headlines. 20 summits, twice in one season. It would be a sensation that would write his name in history in golden letters. He could become a living legend, equaling the great Apa. Everyone is waiting for his decision, and Chhewang Nima makes a decision. But not the one everyone expects. He turns down the second summit attempt. He turns down the record, the fame, the newspaper headlines. Why? Because another team is waiting for him. A group of less experienced climbers whom he promised to guide up a neighboring, but also very difficult peak, Baruntse. They are counting on him. He gave them his word. And for Chhewang, a promise made to clients who have entrusted their lives to him is more important than a world record. He makes a choice that baffles many, but one that fits perfectly with his own philosophy. Commitment over ambition, safety and responsibility above personal triumph. He descends from Everest, knowing he's letting a historic chance slip away. But Chhewang is calm. He simply tells everyone he'll do it next year. In the spring of 2011, he's sure the mountain will wait. He still has time. The mountain might wait, but the world around him is spinning at a furious pace. It's the fall of 2010. Chhewang Nima is back in America. Not as a student this time, but as a guest of honor. He's invited to events for the American Himalayan Foundation. He is the living embodiment of success, a man who has gone from being a poor porter to a global mountaineering star. His relatives, who have long since settled in the States, look at him with a mix of pride and anxiety. They see the price Chhewang pays for his success, the danger he faces every season. They plead with him, "Stay, just be here for a couple of months. Rest, you've earned it." They paint a picture of another life for him, safe, stable, far from the glaciers and the thin air. Moreover, he has a very compelling reason to stay. An official invitation arrives for a reception to be attended by the former Vice President of the United States, Al Gore. Just imagine, a boy who grew up in a hut with no electricity is now invited to meet one of the most influential people on the planet. This is the pinnacle of recognition, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. For anyone else, it would be an obvious choice, but not for Chhewang Nima. He politely thanks them and declines. He says he can't stay. He has clients waiting for him in Nepal. He has commitments. He rushes home for the start of the autumn season. Because autumn is another chance to earn for his son's education, for his family's future. He looks at his American relatives and, with that same warm smile, he promises, "I'll definitely be back next year. We'll spend more time together." And Chhewang flies away. He trades warm reception halls and handshakes with the powerful for the cold wind of the Himalayas. He once again chooses duty over fame, responsibility over comfort. He doesn't know that this choice, this rush, this loyalty to his word and his work, is leading him down the only possible path. A path that ends on the slope of Mount Baruntse, the very same mountain for which he gave up a world record in the spring. It seems as if fate has arranged all the pieces on the board and is now waiting for his final move. The final move, Baruntse, 7,129 meters high. Technically, it's not as difficult as Everest, but mountains don't like to be underestimated. This time, Chhewang Nima isn't working for his usual company, but as a hired freelancer. His task seems simple for a man of his caliber, to fix safety ropes on the most difficult section of the route for an international group. A mix of British, American, and Iranian climbers are waiting down at base camp while he makes their path to the summit safe. He'll be paid $1,000 for the job. $1,000. For a global mountaineering star, it's an almost symbolic amount. But for Chhewang, it's a job, and he's here to do it. But the autumn of 2010 is different. From the very start of the season, it's as if the heavens have opened up. The snow is falling almost non-stop. The entire Himalayan region is drowning in abnormally deep snowdrifts. Experienced climbers are worried. Even on Everest, where the infrastructure and logistics are finely tuned, expeditions are canceling their climbs one after another. It's just too dangerous. Unstable snow slabs, ready to break loose at any moment, hang over the routes like loaded guns. But on Baruntse, far from the main tourist trails, the group continues to wait. Their sirdar, Chhewang Nima, is here, so everything should be fine. The slopes of the mountain are covered in a thick, treacherous layer of fresh snow. Like a soft white blanket, it hides the true terrain. Beneath it lie ice, crevasses, and rocks. Every step is a game of roulette, and time is running out. The clients have paid their money, they have limited vacation time, and they're getting nervous down below. Every day of delay is a hit to their budget and their patience. The clock is ticking, the pressure is mounting. Chhewang has to finish his work so the group can begin their summit push. The upper part of the route is the most critical section. It's a snow ridge as sharp as a knife's edge. To the left, a sheer drop. To the right, a sheer drop. And underfoot, an unstable mass of snow that could slide at any moment, taking everything living with it. He knows this risk better than anyone, but he also knows they are waiting for him below. And so, Chhewang heads up. October 23rd, 2010. He doesn't start on the route alone. He's roped to a young but strong Sherpa, Nima Gyaltsen. They are the vanguard, the advance party. The rest of the expedition, all the clients, are waiting for their return in the safety of the lower camps. Only these two are now battling the elements. Their task is to reach the summit and fix the ropes on the most dangerous sections, so that tomorrow the others can follow this path. Despite the horrendous conditions, they move upward with astonishing speed. The snow is waist-deep, and gusting winds throw ice crystals in their faces, but they keep going. Step, breathe, another step. It's an almost meditative state. The monotonous, grueling work they both know inside and out. By 2 in the afternoon, they are almost there. The altimeter reads 7,045 meters. Chhewang Nima and Nima Gyaltsen are just a few dozen meters from the summit. It seems that with one more push, the job will be done. But at this altitude, time becomes a predator. 2 p.m. is already dangerously late. The sun is setting, the shadows are growing long, and the slope will soon plunge into an icy night. There's almost no time left for a safe descent. A ticking timer starts, one that can break the will of even the most experienced climbers. It's either turn back now, leaving the summit just meters away, or push to the end and then descend in darkness. And they keep going. The fatigue built up over long hours of climbing, and the hypoxia, the oxygen starvation that is inevitable at this altitude, begin to take their toll. They dull your instincts, slow your reactions. Even for someone as experienced as Chhewang, the brain works at half power. Focusing gets harder and harder. Nima Gyaltsen, younger and fresher, takes the lead. He's cutting a trench through the deep snow, forging a path along that same razor-thin ridge. Chhewang follows, securing the rope. He's second in line. It's a standard procedure, the way roles are divided on a rope team. But this one detail, who was first and who was second, would prove to be critical just a few minutes later. They move out onto the ridge. Nima Gyaltsen in front, Chhewang Nima slightly behind. The final meters before the summit, the most delicate ones. Chhewang stops. He needs to place another snow picket, an anchor point for the entire rope team. He chooses a spot, raises his tool. He's done this thousands of times. This is his craft, his precision. But today, a trap lies hidden beneath the snow. He can't see it. Under the thick, fluffy pillow is empty space. Chhewang isn't standing on rock. He's on a cornice, a thin balcony of snow, built up by the wind over years, hanging over the abyss. The cornice looks like part of the slope, like a solid ledge. In reality, it's held together by a prayer. He swings the tool, the impact. Or maybe it was just the shift of his own body weight at that exact moment. It was enough. There's a dry, hollow crack that sounds deafening in the thin air. A hairline fracture slices through the air, and in the next instant, the world beneath his feet simply vanishes. A massive slab of frozen snow, the size of a bus, shears away from the ridge. The entire cornice Chhewang was standing on plummets down into the bottomless void. It all happens in a fraction of a second. He doesn't even have time to scream. Nima Gyaltsen, up ahead, feels a sharp tug, and then a terrifying lightness. The rope connecting them goes slack. He turns around. Where his partner stood a split second ago, there is now only a gaping chasm and the whistling wind. This is the moment the safety line should have worked. The rope should have gone taut and held Chhewang, but the chunks of ice and compacted snow falling with him act like a guillotine. They slam into the taut line with incredible force, and it snaps with a deafening crack. Nima is left alone on the slope. He stares down into the swirling cloud of snow dust, where his friend just disappeared. The smiling Sherpa, the Everest legend, the man who had summited the top of the world 19 times, dissolves into the void. Silence. A deafening, ringing silence that follows a catastrophe. Nima Gyaltsen stands on the edge of the precipice, alone, at 7,000 meters. Shock paralyzes him. He screams his friend's name, Chhewang Nima, but the wind snatches the cry and carries it into the abyss. He peers down, trying to see anything, any sign, any trace, but there is only a chaos of snow and ice, plunging hundreds of meters into the depths. He knows there's no chance. Mustering an inhuman effort, he begins the descent alone. Every step down is torture. The image of the collapsing cornice plays over and over in his head. He gets back to camp. His face is a mask of grief. He can't stop sobbing. He can barely stand. At the camp, he's met by an American climber, Melissa Arnott, one of the clients. She sees that only one Sherpa is returning, but she doesn't know what happened. She thinks they're just exhausted after a successful day's work. She walks out to meet him with a thermos of hot tea, smiling, ready to congratulate them on their success. She sees Nima's state and asks, "Where's the other one? Where's your partner?" And through tears and ragged breaths, Nima speaks the fateful words. In that moment, the smile on Melissa's face freezes. The mug of tea nearly falls from her hands. Reality crashes down on the camp just as suddenly as the cornice had on the ridge. Arnott, an experienced guide, instantly snaps into action. She grabs the radio and sends a distress signal to base camp, requesting a helicopter, rescuers, any help possible. But the mountain had already passed its sentence. The wind on the ridge is building to a gale. Snow begins to fall, and most importantly, night is coming. In these conditions, no helicopter can fly that high. No rescue team will head up. Everyone understands. Any help will come too late. The rescue operation is postponed until morning. And in that heavy silence of waiting, the brutal irony of it all sinks in. The man who dedicated his life to making the mountains safe for others was gone, in the very moment he was doing the routine work of setting up safety lines. One of the greatest conquerors of Everest, Chhewang Nima, a giant of mountaineering, met his end not on the slopes of the world's highest peak, but on a technically simpler route. It was like a world champion race car driver getting into a fatal crash in a supermarket parking lot. The mountain had proven once again that it cannot be conquered. You can only come to a temporary agreement with it. And on this day, time was up. When dawn broke, it brought with it a faint sliver of hope, a miracle perhaps. Maybe Chhewang Nima had caught himself, survived, and was waiting for help. The next day, a small group of Sherpas makes a desperate attempt at a ground search. They try to descend into the area where the cornice likely fell. The snow is so deep and loose that the rescuers sink up to their chests. Progress is nearly impossible, and the risk of triggering another avalanche is colossal. After several hours of futile effort, exhausted and demoralized, they are forced to turn back. The ground operation has failed. Meanwhile, news is already flying in Kathmandu. His cousin, Lahakbarita, and other relatives drop everything and charter a helicopter. They fly towards Baruntse, clinging to one last straw of hope. They want to at least survey the slope from the air. But it's as if the mountain is putting up an invisible wall. The closer the helicopter gets to the massif, the worse the turbulence becomes. Air currents toss the machine from side to side like a toy. The pilot, risking the lives of everyone on board, makes several attempts to break through but is ultimately forced to turn back. The mountain won't even let them look. And it's not until October 25th, 2 days after the tragedy, that one of the best rescue pilots in the Himalayas, the legendary climber Simone Moro, takes on the task. He knows these mountains like the back of his hand. In his helicopter, Simone begins a methodical aerial reconnaissance. 6 hours. For 6 long, agonizing hours, he circles the slopes of Baruntse. He peers into every crevasse, every icefall. He flies so close to the sheer faces, it seems the rotor blades will clip the rock. But it's all in vain. The slope where the cornice fell is completely buried by a fresh avalanche. Tens, hundreds of tons of snow and ice have entombed everything. There is no trace, not a scrap of clothing, not a piece of gear, nothing. After 6 hours of searching, Simone Moro gets on the radio and says the words everyone has been dreading. There is no chance. He is buried. The search operation is officially called off. To continue would be to senselessly risk the lives of the rescuers. The official reports contain a cold, dry phrase: presumed dead, missing. For the world, this is the end of the story. But for Chhewang's family, it's the beginning of a tragedy without an end. They will have no body to lay to rest. They will have no grave to visit. The mountain took him completely, leaving not even a chance for a final goodbye. The news of his disappearance spreads across the globe like an avalanche. Major world publications run headlines. Legendary Sherpa missing. One of the greatest climbers vanishes in the Himalayas. Chhewang Nima's name, once found mainly in specialized journals, is now on the lips of millions. Social media is flooded. Dozens, hundreds of people he once guided to summits write posts. He saved my life on Lhasa. His smile at 8,000 meters gave me the strength to go on. I never would have made it back without him. The world suddenly realizes it has lost more than just a record holder. It has lost a man who was a guardian angel for an entire generation of climbers. A memorial service is held in Kathmandu. Everyone is there, from Reinhold Messner to ordinary Sherpas, from government officials to foreign ambassadors. It's a tribute, a recognition of Chhewang's greatness. But behind all the grand words, obituaries, and ceremonies lies a harsh and unjust reality. His family, who lost a husband and a father, receives a standard insurance payout. About $5,000. $5,000. For the life of a man who stood on top of Everest 19 times. Friends, colleagues, and the global climbing community raised donations to help his widow and sons. But no amount of money can replace the loss of their sole provider. Chhewang Nima's salary as a guide was the engine that pulled his entire family upward, giving his children an education and a chance at a different life. And now, that engine has stopped. His death, like a flash of lightning, illuminates the fragility and vulnerability of the Sherpa world. They are the backbone of Himalayan mountaineering. They risk their lives, fixing routes and carrying loads, so that foreign clients can achieve their dreams. But when tragedy strikes, their families are often left to face their grief and financial ruin alone. His colleagues, looking at the snow-capped peaks, say with a mix of sorrow and pride, "He lived for the mountains, and he died for the mountains." But that beautiful phrase can't answer the main, most agonizing question now facing his family. How do you go on living when the mountain that gave you everything has, in one instant, taken away the most precious thing of all? The mountain leaves no evidence. It doesn't give back what it takes, no traces. Climbers and rescuers who later passed along that route scanned the slope, but found nothing. No ice axe, no piece of rope, not even a helmet. The mountain had completely absorbed Chhewang Nima, erasing all traces, as if he had never been on that ridge at all. Physically, nothing of him remained, but the world doesn't forget. His story has become something of a legend, retold in documentaries and articles all over the world. It's a poignant example of self-sacrifice. Everyone remembers the choice he made in the spring of 2010, to give up a world record to honor his commitment to another team. The very same team Chhewang was paving the way for on his final day. That single professional decision transformed into an act of almost fatal loyalty to his duty. Sometimes, for a system to change, a sacrifice is needed, and his death became that very catalyst. A major Nepalese company, Asian Trekking, shaken by the tragedy and the meager compensation the legend's family received, set up a special fund. A fund to help the families of Sherpas who had lost their breadwinner. It was a small step, a drop in the ocean, but it was the start of change. It was an acknowledgement that behind every summit, behind every record, there are people whose families should not be left vulnerable. Chhewang Nima's death also became a grim omen, a kind of canary in the coal mine for the entire mountaineering community. It was a warning that the mountains were becoming more dangerous, and that the risks for the Sherpas leading the way were growing exponentially, and that warning would prove to be prophetic. Just 4 years later, in the spring of 2014, an even greater tragedy would strike on Everest in the Khumbu icefall, claiming the lives of 16 Sherpas and changing the industry forever. But in the mountains, where logic often gives way to belief, another kind of memory was born. Among the Sherpas, a legend began to circulate, passed on in whispers. They say the spirit of the smiling Sherpa, Chhewang's spirit, never left the Himalayas, that he remains up there, watching over the slopes of Everest, warding off disaster for other climbers. His smile has become an invisible shield. This is how he is remembered by his people, not as a victim, but as a guardian. And for the rest of the world, he will forever remain a symbol of ultimate professionalism, absolute calm, And the cruel irony of fate. He was a man who calculated every risk except for one. The one thing you can never calculate, predict, or conquer: pure chance. Let us know in the comments. What do you think? Did Chhewang do the right thing when he gave up the record for his clients?